Many of our allies and friends are celebrating May 8th as Victory Day, which is today, but we did more than any other country by far in producing a victorious result in World War II. I am hereby renaming May 8th Victory Day for World War II, and November 11th is Victory Day for World War I, whatever. But we won both wars. Nobody was close to us in terms of strength, bravery, or military brilliance. But we never celebrate anything, which is odd to say. And so anyway, he goes on from there. But those are the big two things that we did more by far than any other country to win World War II. But what do you say, Professor?
Well, he's dead wrong on both World War I and World War II. I won't talk about World War I, but I will talk about World War II, where, of course, he's dead wrong. And also, I think he's showing great disrespect to Russia and to the former Soviet Union for the enormous price that they paid in defeating the Wehrmacht in World War II. Now, it's very important to understand that when we landed on the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, this is about 11 months before the war ended. At that point in time, 93% of all German casualties were on the Eastern Front. 93%. And in those last 11 months of the war, roughly 2/3 of all German casualties were on the Eastern Front. To take it a step further, in 1942, during the famous Battle of El Alamein, where the British tangled with the German Wehrmacht, there were 4.5 German divisions, 4.5 in North Africa. At the same time, there were 190 German divisions on the Eastern Front. This is why the Russians, actually the Soviets, because it was the Soviet Union at the time, the Soviets lost, in my estimation, 24 million people. In the present Russian administration's estimation, they lost 27 million. The Americans lost a little over 400,000 men. And I do not want to belittle for 1 second the price that we paid and the British paid to defeat Germany, because we certainly contributed to that victory against Germany. But there's absolutely no question that it was the Soviet Union that paid the blood price. When you're in a war of attrition against a formidable adversary like Nazi Germany, and the only way you can win that war is to wear that Wehrmacht down, whoever does most of that heavy lifting is going to suffer enormously. And it was, of course, the Soviet Union or the Red Army that paid the blood price. Just think about that, 27 million people. In addition to the number of people that were killed, the amount of destruction that the Germans caused in the Soviet Union as they retreated eastward is almost unfathomable. They destroyed millions and millions of farms and towns and roads and so forth and so on. It's just truly remarkable how much destruction the Germans wrought on the former Soviet Union. So it's very important to understand that although the United States and Britain played an important role, they played an important role in defeating Nazi Germany, by far, the Soviet Union was the most important factor in finishing off the Third Reich.
And I just want to reinforce that this is in no way any diminishing words upon the people who in the United States and Great Britain and some of the other Western allies who took part in this. As you yourself, you have family members who took part in that. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, my father was in the Army Air Corps, and my uncle, John J. Mearsheimer, who I was named after, was in the 10th Mountain Division in Italy. He was a combat medic, had 2 Bronze Stars with V's for valor. And I certainly would not want to diminish the importance of what the United States military did in contributing to the defeat of Nazi Germany. But again, there were other actors involved. And if you're weighing what was the relative contribution of each of the actors, there is absolutely no question that the Soviets paid that blood price. And by the way, in World War I, we suffered enormous casualties as well. But if you look at the casualty levels of France and Britain and Russia, which played the key role in defeating Imperial Germany, you cannot possibly make the argument that we, the United States, won World War I, that we paid the blood price of defeating Imperial Germany. We did pay a blood price. We did contribute. But the fact is that it was France, Russia, and Great Britain that paid the real blood price.
And what's the consequence of that? What's other than just like, well, all right, but I mean, they were involved, but this is just kind of a hurrah moment for America. What is the real danger in having that kind of a view?
Well, I think the real danger is it just shows disrespect for other people, number one. I think if you're in Russia today, which is, of course, the principal remnant state left over from when the Soviet Union collapsed, this is deeply offensive. Just think about the sacrifice that Russia / the Soviet Union played to defeat Nazi Germany. And here you have President Trump disrespecting that great sacrifice, disrespecting this country. But furthermore, when Trump makes comments like that, which are so at odds with the historical record, it really casts doubt or doubts on his judgment. It's truly remarkable that he would make such a foolish statement. Someone who is the president of the United States should simply know better. And I know that we've reached the point where we just say, well, this is Donald Trump, and he just says a lot of outrageous things. He contradicts himself from one day to another, and it really doesn't matter because it's just Donald Trump and everybody understands that. But I don't believe that's true. I think it says a lot about his judgment, and I think it says a lot about whether you can trust the man, because he's saying one thing one day and another thing another day, and much of what he says is simply not true. So if you're a foreign leader and you're looking at the United States and you're thinking about how to deal with Donald Trump, you have to scratch your head and say, is he a reliable negotiating partner? And I think the answer in most cases is no.
Okay, well, that's very significant, because obviously we're in the process of trying to negotiate an end to this war right now. And because today is May the 8th, and many in the West are celebrating the end of the World War II today, and then Russia's going to celebrate it tomorrow. In Germany, for example, there was a celebration celebrating the end of the war, and Russia and Belarus were expressly denied permission to even attend, even if they wanted to. They couldn't send diplomatic personnel. They rejected that. Meanwhile, Russia opened up. It says, yes, you're all welcome to come here. And of course, most of the West didn't. But Robert Fico, in particular, of Slovakia, made a point of saying, hey, listen, I went to the Arlington Cemetery and paid homage to the Americans. I went to UK to pay homage to the RAF pilots that helped liberate us. And I am going to Russia because they helped liberate us on the ground too. What does that tell you about at least some in Europe who seem to acknowledge the totality of the historical record?
Well, it tells you that this celebration is inextricably bound up with contemporary politics. In other words, it's almost impossible to deal with this important historical event called World War II without bringing the conflict in Ukraine into the discussion of that issue. And the reason that, President Trump and European leaders, except for people like Fico, won't go to Moscow is in large part because of the Ukraine war. And to some extent, you can understand that. But I think at the same time, dissing the Russians, treating them with great disrespect, and treating what happened between 1941 and 1945 with disrespect, as President Trump has done, is disgraceful and should not have happened.